Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to do a deep dive on managing upward.
Ooh.
We've got some really great excerpts from a practical guide on the topic,
Okay.
along with some pretty fascinating research behind it.
I like it.
So think of this as like your toolkit
Okay.
for not just surviving, but thriving
Yeah.
in your interactions with higher-ups.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Managing upward is often seen as this kind of taboo, almost manipulative thing.
Right.
But in reality, it's about creating a win-win situation for you and your manager,
Right.
fostering a more productive and positive environment for everyone.
I've always wondered about that. Like,
Yeah.
where's the line between genuine collaboration
Yeah.
and, well, let's just say less than genuine tactics?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The guide actually tackles this head on,
Okay.
debunking some common myths right away.
Good.
It's not about brown-nosing or being a yes person.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
One of the researchers even makes the point that managing upward is crucial in organizations where leadership might not be the strongest. It's about stepping up not in a way that undermines your manager,
Right.
but in a way that helps everyone move forward.
And that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's almost like instead of waiting for things to improve,
Yeah.
you become a catalyst for positive change.
That's good.
I'm already starting to see how this could be empowering, not just for your own career,
Yeah.
but for the whole team.
Exactly. And one of the most powerful tools in this process, as highlighted in both the guide and the research, is emotional intelligence, or EQ.
Right.
Now, you might be thinking, okay, I know what EQ is.
Yeah.
Self-awareness, empathy, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But here's where it gets really interesting.
Hey, I'm all ears.
All right.
What's the not so obvious part?
Well, the research actually dives into a specific aspect of EQ that's particularly relevant to managing upward,
Okay.
self-management.
Okay.
It's not just about keeping your cool under pressure,
Okay.
but understanding how your emotional reactions might be perceived by your manager. For example, imagine you get some tough feedback on a project.
I've been there.
Yeah.
My knee-jerk reaction is usually to get defensive,
Yeah.
even if I know the feedback is valid.
Right, and that's totally natural.
Yeah.
But if your manager's style is very direct, they might interpret that defensiveness as a lack of coachability, even if that's not your intention at all.
Wow.
The research actually found that employees who were better at regulating their initial emotional responses were perceived by their managers as more adaptable, open to feedback, and ultimately more valuable to the team.
Wow, that's a really interesting connection.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see how mastering self-management could be a game changer when it comes to managing upward effectively.
For sure.
But how do you actually do that, especially in the heat of the moment when those emotions are running high?
That's a great question. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And thankfully, the guide offers some really practical strategies. It all starts with self-awareness. You have to recognize your own emotional triggers,
Okay.
those situations or types of feedback that tend to set you off.
So it's almost like creating a mental map of your emotional landscape, figuring out where those potential landmines are.
Exactly. Once you know your triggers, you can start to develop strategies for managing your reactions. The guide calls these emotional regulation tools.
Right?
One simple technique is the pause and breathe method. Literally just take a few deep breaths before you respond. It sounds basic, but it gives you a moment to collect yourself and choose a more thoughtful response.
I can see how that would be helpful.
Yeah,
Sometimes I just blurt things out and then I'm like, okay, I should have thought about that for a second.
we've all been there. Another strategy the guide recommends is reframing. Instead of seeing a challenging situation as a threat, try to see it as an opportunity for growth or learning.
So instead of thinking, ooh, if my manager is criticizing my work, I could try to reframe it as, okay, this is a chance for you to get some valuable feedback and improve my skills.
Precisely. And this ties back to managing upward. If you can demonstrate that you're coachable and open to feedback, even when it's tough, that goes a long way in building trust and credibility with your manager.
This is all making a lot of sense. It's almost like instead of trying to suppress your emotions, you're learning to channel them in a way that's productive and beneficial for everyone.
That's a great way to put it. And here's a really interesting tidbit from the research they found that leaders who were skilled at self-management were actually more effective at managing conflict within their teams. It's like this ripple effect. When you're able to stay calm and collected in challenging situations, it creates a sense of psychological safety for everyone around you.
That makes sense. If my manager's freaking out, it's going to make me feel stressed and anxious. But if they're handling things calmly and rationally, it's going to make me feel more confident and supported.
Exactly. Okay, so we've talked about the importance of self-management and managing upward, but let's get practical here. What are some specific strategies we can use to build a strong, positive relationship with our manager?
I'm ready to get tactical. The guide actually breaks down a few key strategies, starting with building a strong foundation. It might seem obvious, but being reliable, meeting deadlines, and producing high-quality work are essential.
Mm.
It shows your manager that they can count on you.
Absolutely. Reliability is huge, but it goes beyond just doing your job. It's about demonstrating a proactive mindset. Don't wait to be told what to do, anticipate your manager's needs, and offer solutions.
So instead of just saying, here's that report you asked for, I could also say, here's that report you asked for, and I also analyzed the data and came up with a few recommendations for next steps.
Exactly. That's a perfect example of going above and beyond. It shows that you're not just a task completer, but a strategic thinker who's invested in the team's success.
Okay, that makes sense. So reliability, proactivity, what else is in this foundation building toolkit?
Communication, clear, concise, and tailored to your manager's style. Remember that tip from earlier about understanding how your manager processes information if they're a big picture person. Don't bog them down with unnecessary details if they're detail-oriented. Make sure you provide all the necessary information upfront.
It's like speaking their language, right? Making sure your message is delivered in a way that resonates with them.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to ask for clarification on their communication preferences early in my career. I had a manager who was notorious for firing off emails at all hours.
Oh, yeah.
I finally worked up the courage to say, hey, I want to make sure I'm staying on top of things, but is it okay if I check email just a couple of times a day so I can focus on my work without distractions? And she was totally cool with it.
That's a great example of how being proactive and communicating your needs can actually benefit both of you.
Exactly. Okay, so we've got reliability, proactivity, and communication. The guide also emphasizes the importance of seeking feedback regularly. Don't wait for performance reviews. Ask for feedback on specific projects or initiatives. This shows your manager that you're committed to growth and development.
That's a good point. But isn't there a risk of coming across as insecure or needy if you're constantly asking for feedback?
That's a valid concern. It's all about how you frame it. Instead of saying, do you think I'm doing a good job? You could say something like, I'm really focused on improving my presentation skills. Would you be willing to give me some feedback on how I did in that meeting?
Okay, that's much better. It shows that you're being intentional and specific about what you want to improve.
Exactly. And here's another tip. Focus on seeking feedback that's actionable. Instead of asking, what do you think? Ask, what's one thing I could do differently next time? This shows that you're not just looking for validation. You're genuinely committed to learning and growing.
I love that it takes the pressure off your manager to give you some kind of sweeping evaluation and focuses on specific areas for improvement.
Right. And speaking of pressure, the guide also highlights the importance of understanding your manager's pressures and priorities. Remember, they're not just managing you, they're managing a whole team, a department, or maybe even the entire organization.
So it's about seeing things from their perspective, understanding the challenges they're facing, and how your work fits into the bigger picture.
Exactly. And this leads us to another key strategy, problem solving. Instead of just bringing problems to your manager, try to come to the table with potential solutions.
So instead of saying, we're having this issue with the project, I could say we're having this issue with the project, and I've identified a few possible solutions. Which one do you think would be the best approach?
Exactly. This demonstrates that you're not just a passive observer. You're actively engaged in finding solutions and helping the team move forward.
This is all really helpful. I'm starting to feel like I have a much better grasp of how to approach managing upward strategically and authentically. But what about those potential pitfalls we talked about earlier? How do we avoid those common mistakes that can sabotage our efforts?
That's a great question, and one that the guide addresses directly. It's all about finding that sweet spot between being proactive and overstepping boundaries.
Okay, so where exactly does that line get blurry?
Well, one of the biggest pitfalls, as we mentioned earlier, is micromanaging upward. It's that well-intentioned but ultimately frustrating behavior of constantly checking in with your manager on every tiny detail.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. I once worked with someone who would send me an email every time they completed a task, no matter how small it was. Like, I just sharpened my pencil. Do you need an update on that?
That's a hilarious example, and it perfectly illustrates the point. It's about finding that balance between keeping your manager informed and overwhelming them with unnecessary updates.
So how do you strike that balance? What's the secret sauce?
The guide suggests asking yourself a simple question before you hit send on that email or schedule that meeting. Is this information essential for my manager to know right now, or can it wait? If it can wait, save it for a regular check-in or status update.
That's a really helpful guideline. It's about being selective and strategic about the information you share.
Exactly. And it goes back to understanding your manager's communication style and preferences. If there's someone who likes to be in the loop on everything, maybe more frequent check-ins are appropriate. But if they prefer to delegate and trust their team to handle the details, then less is more.
Okay, so avoid micromanaging upward. What other pitfalls do we need to be aware of?
Another common one is dying on every hill, which we touched on earlier. It's that tendency to challenge every decision or offer unsolicited feedback on every topic.
I can see how that could get old fast, especially if your manager feels like you're constantly second-guessing them.
Exactly. It's important to choose your battles. Wisely ask yourself, is this issue truly important enough to push back on, or am I just being nitpicky? If it's not a hill worth dying on, let it go.
Okay, so pick your battles strategically. What else?
Misinterpreting communication styles. This can be a big one, especially if you and your manager have very different communication preferences.
I've definitely experienced this. I tend to be very direct and to the point in my communication, which can sometimes come across as blunt or insensitive, especially to people who are more indirect in their style.
That's a great example. It's important to be mindful of how your communication style might be perceived by your manager if they tend to be more reserved or diplomatic. You might need to adjust your approach to be more tactful.
So it's not just about being a good communicator, it's about being a good communicator for your specific manager.
Exactly. It's about adapting your style to ensure that your message is received in the way you intended.
Okay, so we've talked about micromanaging upward dying on every hill and misinterpreting communication styles. What other pitfalls do we need to be on the lookout for?
The guide also highlights the importance of not neglecting your relationships with your peers while focusing on your relationship with your manager is essential. Don't forget that you're part of a team.
Right, don't become so focused on managing upward that you forget about the importance of teamwork and collaboration.
Exactly. Maintaining positive and supportive relationships with your colleagues is crucial for a healthy and productive work environment. It's about striking that balance.
So we've talked about avoiding pitfalls, but let's shift gears for a moment. What about using our newfound managing upward skills to help others? How can we create opportunities for junior staff or team members?
This is where things get really exciting. The sources emphasize that managing upward well isn't just about personal gain, it's about using your influence to lift others up.
I love that. So how do we do this in practice?
There are several ways delegating tasks effectively is a big one. Give junior staff members opportunities to stretch their skills and take on new challenges. Provide them with the resources and support they need to succeed, but also give them the space to learn and grow.
It's about empowering them, right? Giving them ownership and helping them build confidence.
Exactly. Another way to create opportunities is by advocating for junior staff. Speak up for them in meetings, highlight their achievements to your manager, and champion their ideas.
It's about being their sponsor, their cheerleader. And let's not forget about mentoring and coaching. Sharing your knowledge and experience with junior staff can make a huge difference in their development.
You're so right. And all of this contributes to a more positive and supportive work environment overall. When people feel valued and empowered, they're more engaged, more productive, and more likely to stay with the organization.
It's like this amazing ripple effect. Managing upward, well, doesn't just benefit you, it creates a more growth-oriented culture for everyone.
This is a perfect example of how managing upward can be a force for positive change within an organization.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We've learned that managing upward is an ongoing process of self-reflection, understanding your manager, and using your skills to build relationships that benefit everyone.
And it's not just about getting ahead, it's about making a positive impact on your team and organization.
So as we wrap up, here's a final provocative thought for our listeners. Now that you know the strategies and pitfalls, what's one small step you can take this week to start building a more productive and positive relationship with your manager? We'd love to hear your thoughts, experiences, and questions on social media. It doesn't have to be some grand gesture.
You're absolutely right. Even a small step can make a difference. Maybe it's sending a quick thank you email to your manager for their support on a recent project, or offering to help a teammate who's feeling overwhelmed.
Those little acts of kindness and support can really go a long way in building those strong relationships. And as you become more comfortable with the concepts we've discussed, you can start incorporating those more advanced techniques like framing problems as opportunities or using emotional intelligence to navigate those tricky conversations.
It's a journey of continuous improvement, and the beauty is that these skills aren't just applicable to managing upward.
Right.
They can benefit you in all aspects of your work and even your personal life.
I love that it's like investing in your overall communication and relationship building skills, which can pay dividends in all areas of your life.
And remember, we're all in this together.
Yeah.
Sharing our experiences, asking questions, and supporting each other along the way, that's what makes this community so special.
It really is. So to all our listeners out there, we encourage you to embrace this journey of mastering the art of managing upward. It might feel a bit daunting at first,
Right.
but with the right mindset and a willingness to learn and grow, you can transform your work relationships and create a more positive and fulfilling work experience for yourself and those around you.
And who knows, you might even inspire others to do the same, creating a ripple effect of positive change throughout your entire organization.
That's a great note to end on. Thanks for joining us in this deep dive into managing upward. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.